Welcome. Somewhere in a minimum security prison camp in Bryan, Texas, a 64-year-old British socialite is eating clamshell meals delivered to her room, drinking bottled water, receiving mail handled personally by the warden, and waiting. Her name is Ghislaine Maxwell. She is the convicted child sex trafficker and primary accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, the most infamous predator in modern American history. And right now, the President of the United States is weighing whether to set her free. Not someday, not vaguely, in theory, this summer, possibly on his own birthday, possibly on the 4th of July, as part of a list of 250 pardons designed to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the American Republic. 250 pardons, one for every year the country has existed. And the question burning through Washington, through victims advocacy groups, through the halls of Congress, and through the betting markets right now is Ghislaine Maxwell going to be one of them? Stay with us, because the story of how we got here and what Maxwell is offering in exchange is darker and more extraordinary than anything you have read in the headline. Before we go any further, if you are new to this channel, you are in the right place. We cover the stories that deserve more than 30 seconds on the evening news. We connect the dots, we follow the evidence, and we do not stop when it gets uncomfortable. If this kind of journalism matters to you, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this content. And if you are not subscribed, please subscribe and ring the bell. Every story we tell is built around the truth that the public deserves. Now, let us go back to the beginning. The plan, first reported by the Wall Street Journal in May 2026, is straightforward in its design and explosive in its implications. Donald Trump is reportedly weighing the issuance of approximately 250 presidential pardons to mark America's 250th birthday. The announcements could come on June 14th, which is Trump's own birthday, and also the United States Flag Day, or on July 4th, Independence Day, when the country will gather for what the White House has promised will be a spectacular national celebration. The president has already overseen an extraordinary number of pardons in his second term. More than 1,600 acts of clemency have been issued since Trump returned to office, a figure that dwarfs the 250 he issued across his entire first term. Many of those early second-term pardons went to individuals involved in the January 6th Capitol riot. On his first day back in office, Trump issued clemency to more than 1,500 people connected to that event. Since then, the pardons have fanned out in every direction. High-profile recipients have included Changpeng Zhao, the founder of the cryptocurrency exchange Binance, who had pleaded guilty to anti-money laundering charges. Ross Ulbricht, the founder of the dark web marketplace Silk Road, was pardoned. So were Arthur Hayes and Benjamin Delo, the co-founders of the crypto exchange BitMEX. These pardons were each controversial on their own terms. Taken together, they paint a picture of an administration that has used the pardon power on a scale and in a direction that few anticipated. And now, with 250 more reportedly on the table, the names under discussion are even more charged. The two names that have dominated the pardon speculation are Ghislaine Maxwell and Sam Bankman-Fried. They could not be more different in their backgrounds, their crimes, or their political significance, but they share one thing in common. Both have actively sought clemency from the Trump administration, and both represent tests of how far this pardon power is willing to stretch. Let us start with Bankman-Fried, the former head of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange. He was convicted of one of the most sweeping financial frauds in American history. Billions of dollars in customer funds evaporated. Ordinary investors lost everything. A court-ordered restitution figure of approximately $11 billion was set. Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He has waged what observers describe as a relentless public campaign to shift opinion in his favor. His allies have lobbied, petitions have been signed, arguments have been made, and Trump's answer, stated publicly in an interview with the New York Times in January 2026, was unambiguous. No, he said he had no intention of granting Bankman-Fried a pardon. The door appeared to close, but it has not fully locked, because lobbying efforts around him have reportedly continued, and the 250 pardon plan has cracked it open again just enough for speculation to rush back in. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell. This case is different in almost every conceivable way. Ghislaine Maxwell is not simply a convicted criminal seeking mercy. She is the most consequential living witness to one of the most disturbing criminal networks in modern history. Her connection to Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire financier and convicted sex offender who died in a New York jail cell in August 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges, places her at the center of a story that has consumed public attention for years and shows no sign of fading. Maxwell was convicted in December 2021 of 5 federal charges, including sex trafficking of a minor and conspiracy for her role in recruiting grooming, and facilitating the sexual abuse of underage girls over the course of more than a decade. She is serving a 20-year sentence. Her scheduled release date, according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons website, is July 17th, 2037. She has appealed her conviction, but the Supreme Court declined to hear her case in October 2025. And it is at that precise moment, after the Supreme Court door closed, that the pardon conversation exploded into the open. Trump, when asked by reporters in October 2025 whether he would consider a pardon for Maxwell, said he had not heard the name in so long, but would take a look at it. That phrase, take a look at it, set off a chain of events that is not yet concluded because it signaled to Maxwell's legal team that the conversation was open, and Maxwell's legal team has a very specific offer on the table. Here's where the story becomes something you almost have to read twice to believe. In February 2026, Maxwell appeared before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee for a deposition. The committee is investigating Jeffrey Epstein, the networks surrounding him, and the people who may have had knowledge of or involvement in his crimes. This was, by any measure, a moment of extraordinary significance. The world was waiting to hear what Ghislaine Maxwell knew. She said nothing. She invoked her Fifth Amendment right to silence repeatedly, sitting at a conference table in a brown prison-issued shirt, a bottle of water in front of her, and telling the assembled lawmakers again and again that she was exercising her constitutional right not to answer. The video footage of that deposition spread across the internet within hours, and then her attorney, David Oscar Marcus, walked out and explained the situation in terms that could not be misunderstood. Maxwell was prepared, he said, to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. And then he said something even more extraordinary. He said that both Donald Trump and former President Bill Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing, but that Maxwell alone can explain why, and that the public is entitled to that explanation. Let that settle for a moment. The primary accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein is sitting in a Texas prison. She has information about one of the most powerful criminal networks in living memory. She is willing to testify, but only if she goes free. And the price of her testimony is a presidential pardon from one of the men she's offering to publicly exonerate. This is the deal on the table. While the pardon debate has raged in Washington and in the media, something else has been quietly unfolding at the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. Maxwell was transferred to this minimum security facility, sometimes nicknamed Club Fed for its comparatively relaxed conditions, in August 2025. She had previously been held at a higher security federal prison in Florida. The transfer itself raised immediate questions. It came after Maxwell had met twice with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, the same Todd Blanche who had served as Donald Trump's personal attorney before joining the Justice Department. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee wrote to the administration demanding to know whether Maxwell had been given special treatment in exchange for political favors. The administration provided no satisfactory answer, and then the details about her conditions inside the prison began to emerge. A former prison employee named Noella Turnage, who was subsequently fired for leaking information, shared private emails Maxwell had sent to her brother. In those emails, Maxwell described her situation in terms that bore almost no resemblance to what federal imprisonment is supposed to feel like. She wrote that the food was dramatically better, that the facility was clean, that the staff was responsive and polite, and that she felt as if she had fallen through the looking glass into another world. She said she was much happier and felt safe. Other reports, citing inmates and staff, described Maxwell receiving bottled water and clamshell meals delivered directly to her room. Her mail was handled personally by the warden, a privilege that other inmates struggling to send basic court filings could only observe with bitterness. A private visit was arranged for Maxwell that required the prison to shut down general supplies. Visitation for the entire weekend, meaning other inmates could not see their own families in order to accommodate Maxwell's guests. Armed Special Operations response teams were stationed at the entrance and rear gates around the clock. And in one particularly surreal detail, Maxwell was reportedly given access to spend time with puppies in training to become service dogs. This is what federal imprisonment looks like for the convicted accomplice of the most notorious sex trafficker in American history. While her pardon is reportedly under consideration by the president, the response in Washington to the pardon discussion has been sharp and unusually bipartisan in its alarm. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, a Republican from Kentucky, initially told Politico that a lot of people in the committee were open to the idea of granting Maxwell clemency in exchange for her testimony about Epstein. He later reversed course under pressure, clarifying that he personally did not support a pardon. But the damage of the initial statement was done. It confirmed publicly what many had suspected privately, that among some in the Republican caucus, there is genuine appetite for a deal. Democrats were unified in their opposition. Representative Robert Garcia of California stated plainly that Democrats on the committee were united against any pardon for Maxwell in return for testimony or cooperation. Representative Rakana raised a pointed procedural objection, noting that Maxwell had previously spoken with Deputy Attorney General Blanche without invoking the Fifth Amendment, and that her decision to plead silence before Congress appeared inconsistent with that prior conduct. He was asking a version of a question that many people were already asking. Why would someone prepared to talk to the president's former personal attorney refuse to talk to a congressional committee without a pardon guarantee? The answer, of course, is obvious. The pardon is not just about getting out of prison. It is about the terms under which information is released and to whom and what that information is shaped to say. Inside the White House, the 250 pardon plan is generating anxiety of its own. Sources described as White House officials told the Wall Street Journal that some within the administration are worried about the political fallout from another mass pardon event, particularly given that the midterm elections are approaching. Trump's past pardons have drawn criticism from members of both parties. The January 6 pardons were particularly polarizing. The crypto pardons attracted accusations that the president was rewarding financial allies. Congressional Democrats have launched an investigation into whether pardon recipients made payments through lobbyists, social media influencers, and lawyers to gain access to the decision-making process. Lawmakers are looking specifically at whether people in Trump's orbit were compensated to advocate for specific pardons, and whether any of that money found its way back to people close to the president. These are not peripheral concerns. They go to the heart of whether the pardon power, which the Constitution grants to the president with almost no formal constraints, is being used as an instrument of justice or as a private transaction. The White House, when asked, has maintained that Trump is the ultimate decision maker on all clemency actions and that no decisions have been made on the 250 pardon plan as of the time of this report. A spokesperson for Trump's press office referred inquiries to prior statements from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who said in late 2025 that a Maxwell pardon was not something the president was talking about or even thinking about at that moment in time. That phrase, at that moment in time, is doing a great deal of work. Step back from the individual names and the individual cases for a moment and look at the structure of what is happening. A president with the broadest use of pardon power in modern American history is now reportedly considering 250 more pardons to mark a national birthday. Among the candidates is a woman who holds information about an international sex trafficking network that reached into the highest levels of politics, business, and entertainment on multiple continents. That woman is living in a comfortable minimum security facility with special meals and private visits and mail handled by the warden after meeting with the president's own former personal attorney. She's refusing to testify to Congress, but offering through her attorney to speak freely in exchange for a presidential pardon. And what she is offering, should the pardon be granted, is testimony that exonerates the current president. The betting markets, cold and unsentimental as they are, have moved. The probability of Maxwell receiving a pardon by the end of 2026 surged from 7% to 22% in a single week in May 2026, before settling somewhat lower. These are not certainties, but they are signals. They tell you where informed observers think the weight of probability is falling. The victims of Jeffrey Epstein, the women and girls who were abused by a man who died in a jail cell before he could be fully held accountable, are watching all of this. Advocacy groups have stated clearly and loudly that pardoning Maxwell would represent a direct attack on the integrity of the justice system and on the dignity of every survivor whose abuse Maxwell helped to enable. Their voices are the ones that deserve the most weight in any honest reckoning with this story. Not the deal makers, not the lobbyists, not the betting markets. Thank you for watching us to the end. This story is not finished. The pardon decision has not been made. The testimony has not been given. The investigation continues, and this channel will continue to follow it wherever it now leads. If you want to be here when the next chapter breaks, please subscribe and hit the bell right now. Leave a comment below telling us what you think should happen, because your voice is part of this conversation too. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what is at stake, and hit the like button if this story gave you something to think about. We will see you in the next one.